The day you stop giving a damn is the day they lose their grip. That's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. The world tells you, just care more. Be available. Show them you're always there. But what if I told you that's the exact reason they started losing interest? What if I told you that your silence, your indifference, hits harder than any emotional plea ever could? Hey folks, imagine this. You're feeding a fire every single day. Wood, matches, oxygen, hoping it warms you back. But all it's doing is burning you in return. And the moment you stop, the moment you walk away and stop tossing in your effort, that fire goes wild. It starts smoking, flickering, struggling, because the one feeding it is gone. That's how they feel when you stop giving a damn. They don't crumble when you're chasing them. They fall apart when you disappear. Let me tell you something that'll break the lie you've been living with. Your worth was never proven by how hard you tried to keep someone around. That's not love. That's slavery in disguise. You bent, you folded, you texted first. You checked in every time they went quiet, and they knew it. They were never confused about your feelings. They were confused about why you had so little for yourself. They were never addicted to your love, my friends. They were addicted to your attention. And the moment that attention disappears, boom, the mind games begin. But this time, not in your head, in theirs. Because when someone is used to you being their emotional backup plan, their mirror, their fan club, and suddenly you vanish, it shakes their whole identity. That silence, it's not empty, it's loaded. It's a mirror they can't escape. You don't even need to say a word. Your absence does all the talking. And I know some of you might say, but I don't want to be mean. I don't want to play games. Let me be real with you. This isn't about playing games. This is about reclaiming your energy. You've been pouring your heart into people who only show up when they feel you slipping. That's not love. That's convenience. Marcus Aurelius said, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I will gladly change. But if they merely insult or manipulate, I will not respond." That's the Stoic code. Respond only when it's worthy of your energy. And some people, they're not worthy of your explanation, your words, or your presence. Not anymore. You don't chase. You don't beg. You don't explain. You build. You evolve. You stay quiet, not because you're weak, but because you've outgrown the version of yourself who needed their validation to feel whole. And let me sprinkle in a little truth here. Sometimes they don't even realize how much they depended on your attention until it's gone. That's when the spiral begins. They'll start checking your stories, asking mutual friends, throwing bait your way, posting things they hope you'll react to. But you're already too far ahead. Not bitter, just built different. So next time you feel the urge to text, explain, fix, or prove, pause, breathe, and remember, you don't owe your peace to people who disturbed it. This is where you rise, my friend, quietly, strongly, without noise, without permission. Now drop this in the comments. I owe them nothing. Say it, feel it, live it. And if this shook something inside you, like subscribe and stay with me. We're just getting started. Number 1. The obsession was never love. It was control. They never loved your soul. They loved your attention. And when that disappeared, so did their power. Let that sink in. You kept asking yourself, why did they pull away when I gave everything? Why did they seem to lose interest the more I showed I cared? Here's the brutal answer most won't tell you. It was never about love. It was about leverage. And your constant giving, your availability, your attention, your presence, was the fuel that kept their ego alive. Think of it like this. You're a river, steady, flowing, always there. At first, they admire you. They're refreshed by your current. But over time, they take it for granted. They stop showing up to the banks. They assume the river will always be there. But what happens when the river dries up? What happens when the source goes silent? That's when the panic sets in. That's when they realize what they had is gone. And you were that source. You were always checking in, always responding, always ready to explain yourself, fix the miscommunication, chase the breadcrumb of connection. But it was never about your words. It was about how safe they felt knowing they had you, that even if they pushed you away, you'd circle right back, that even if they went cold, you'd heat things up, that even if they disappeared, your energy would still orbit their world. They never feared losing you, because they were addicted to controlling the version of you who feared losing them. And now you're starting to see it, aren't you? That sick feeling in your gut wasn't love, it was anxiety. The constant overthinking wasn't romance, it was survival mode. You thought if you just gave more, loved harder, waited longer, they'd finally see your worth. But the truth is, the more you overgave, the more they undervalued you. Not because you weren't worthy, but because you forgot you were. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable, my friends. This shift, this decision to stop giving a damn, it won't be easy. Because for so long, your identity was built around being the one who cares more. You got used to performing emotional CPR every time they flatlined the connection. You built your peace on their chaos. You confused effort with value. You thought their attention meant affection. You thought their inconsistency was mystery. But it was manipulation, emotional currency, and you kept paying the price with your time, your mental health, your sense of self. You see, love doesn't feel like confusion. It doesn't come with games. It doesn't have to be chased. When someone truly values you, they don't wait for your silence to feel your presence. They don't test your patience to prove your loyalty. They meet you with clarity, not chaos, with intention, not illusion. And this is why detachment is terrifying for them, because your absence forces them to confront the truth they tried to avoid. They didn't love you. They loved the control they had over you. And now, that control is gone. You've unplugged from the game. You've gone inward. You're reclaiming your time, your energy, your focus. That doesn't just scare them, it shatters their ego. So the next time you're tempted to explain yourself, to chase, to make them feel comfortable again with your presence, don't. Remember that your value was never in your availability. It was in your essence, your stability, your presence. And now you're redirecting all that energy back to where it should have been the whole time, into you. This isn't about making them suffer. This is about making sure you stop suffering. This is about clarity, peace, power. So say this with me. Write it in the comments. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world around you that the old version of you is gone. Type this now. My silence is my power. Let them feel the absence. Let them question. Let them spiral. And stay with me, because what's coming next? It's the part where they really start losing their mind. Number 2. Your silence screams louder than their manipulation. When you go quiet, they don't hear peace. They hear a threat to their control. Let that hit. Because for so long, they didn't fear losing you. They feared losing the version of you who kept proving your worth. The one who always responded. The one who always tried to fix things. The one who over-explained, overthought, overgave. You were predictable, safe, always available. They didn't have to wonder if you were still there. They knew you were, because even when they disappeared, you showed up. Even when they stayed silent, you filled the silence with effort, with, "Are you okay?" and "What did I do wrong?" You thought that would bring them closer. You thought your vulnerability would make them value you, but all it did was make you easy to ignore. Now imagine this, 2 people standing in a room. One is yelling, begging, pouring their heart out. The other is just silent. No emotion, no words, no reaction. Who do you think holds the power? The one screaming or the one unfazed? Exactly. Silence isn't weakness, folks. It's the most powerful response you can give to someone who used to manipulate your emotions. They expected noise from you. They expected the emotional paragraphs, the over-explaining, the apologizing for things that weren't even your fault. That was the old you, the version addicted to their attention, even if it hurt. But when that noise stops, when you go still, when you don't react, they start to panic, because they no longer have a script to play off. The attention supply line has been cut, and now they're stuck with their own thoughts. That's where the chaos begins, not in you, but in them. And here's what they start thinking. Why did they stop trying? Are they done with me? Did they move on? That silence echoes louder than any message you could have sent. You're not arguing. You're not trying to be heard. You're just gone. And now their mind has no reassurance to grab onto. That's when the game flips, because control doesn't work on people who don't react. It wasn't your presence that made them feel powerful. It was your predictable reactions. And now that you've gone silent, they don't just miss you. They fear what your silence means, because it's not just absence, it's certainty. Certainty that you're no longer playing by their rules. Certainty that you've stopped giving energy to dead conversations. Certainty that you've remembered your worth. And yeah, you might feel guilty at first. You'll want to explain yourself, to make it clear you're not trying to be mean. But let me break the lie that's kept you stuck. You don't owe an explanation to someone who took your words for granted in the first place. You don't owe clarity to someone who fed off your confusion. You don't need to prove your value to people who only noticed you when you were walking away. This is where Stoicism shows its teeth. Because silence, in this context, it's not passive, it's precise. It's a refusal to dance with chaos. It's you saying, I'm not going to let your emotional weather determine the climate of my mind anymore. And let me tell you something else. They'll test it. They'll try to bait you. They'll post something online that feels like a jab. They'll leave a breadcrumb, just enough to see if you'll bite. But don't. Because once you break your silence for the sake of being noticed, you've handed them the power again. You've told them, yes, I'm still here. You still affect me. And once they know that, the cycle restarts. So don't fold, don't explain, don't chase. Let your progress speak. Let your silence roar. Let them sit with the empty space they created, and let them realize it's not empty at all. It's full of everything they took for granted. Your silence is not the absence of emotion. It's the presence of discipline. It's the shield that protects your peace. It's the proof that you've stopped trying to convince someone to value what they once had front row seats to, and still looked away. So drop this in the comments. My silence speaks volumes. Show them, show yourself. Show the world that the era of over-explaining is over. And stay with me, my friends. Because what's coming next? That's the part where they start to question everything. Number 3, when they can't predict you, they panic. The most dangerous person in the room isn't the loudest, it's the one you can't read. Let's get real, folks. Predictability was your prison. They knew exactly what you'd do, how you'd react, when you'd text, and what you'd say next. You were like a book they already read 3 times. No mystery, no tension, no challenge. And here's the cold truth. People don't respect what they can predict. They don't chase what they're sure will always be there. But now, something's changed. You've gone quiet. You've stopped reacting. You're not posting like before. You're not jumping to respond. And that, my friends, is where the panic begins. Not in your mind, but in theirs. Because human beings don't fear rejection as much as they fear uncertainty. And you've become exactly that. A question they don't know how to answer anymore. You've broken the rhythm. You've shifted the pattern. And when someone was used to dancing with your emotional reactions, Your stillness throws them off completely. It's like a boxer swinging wildly in the dark. There's no target to hit. They don't know if you're hurt or healed, moved on or just unmoved. And that not knowing, it's psychological warfare. Let me give you a metaphor. Picture a puppet show. They pull the string and the puppet dances. Pull again, it reacts. Again, it performs. But one day, they pull the string and nothing happens. No movement, no response. The puppet's not broken. It's done dancing. That's you. You're done performing in a show you never auditioned for. You've cut the string, and now they're staring at empty hands, wondering why it doesn't work anymore. You see, they didn't just crave your attention. They were addicted to the control your consistency gave them. You thought being reliable meant being valued, but all it did was make you predictable. They stopped wondering about you because they thought they already had you figured out. They didn't have to earn your presence. It was guaranteed. And guaranteed attention is the fastest way to kill attraction. That's why your shift, your silence, your discipline, your focus is so unsettling to them. They're used to a version of you that revolved around them. Now, you're off the radar. You're living without their commentary. You're no longer announcing your every move through stories, reactions, or vague quotes. You've become unavailable, not because you're hiding, but because you're rising. And now, they panic. They start stalking silently, watching your stories from burner accounts, scrolling through old messages, rereading old texts, looking for signs. They check your feed. They wonder who's got your attention now. They assume. They imagine. They spiral. Because when someone can't predict you anymore, they lose control over how to protect their own ego. But here's the part they don't expect. You're not doing this to get a reaction. You're not playing mind games. You're not sitting in silence just to hurt them. No, you've outgrown the need to be understood by people who made a sport out of misunderstanding you. You've evolved, and that evolution made you unpredictable, and unpredictable means untouchable. Stoicism teaches us that power doesn't come from reaction. It comes from restraint. And right now, you're showing the ultimate restraint by refusing to let someone else's behavior dictate your state of mind. You're not explaining. You're not performing. You're just building. Quietly, relentlessly, inwardly. That's the shift they can't handle, because the old you would have reached out by now. The old you would have cracked. But now, you're the variable they can't decode. You're the mystery they can't solve. And nothing haunts the ego more than a person who no longer seeks its validation. So, let them panic. Let them wonder. Let them sit in the silence they once weaponized. Because you're no longer part of their cycle. You've broken free. Drop this in the comments. I'm done being predictable. Say it loud. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world that the game has changed. And stay with me, because up next, they realize that losing your attention was the biggest mistake they never saw coming. Number 4, they confused access with value until it disappeared. They didn't love you. They loved the fact that you were always available. Let that truth sit with you for a moment, my friends, because this right here, this is where everything begins to make sense. You kept thinking your presence was the gift, that if you just showed up more, replied faster, stayed loyal longer, they'd finally see your worth. But here's the harsh truth nobody wants to admit. When you give someone too much access, they stop valuing the door you opened. You were like a store open 24/7, lights always on, no locks, no limits. And they walked in and out like they owned the place. No respect, no appreciation, just expectation. You were there every time they needed attention, validation, or comfort. But the moment you needed reciprocity, suddenly they were too busy, too distant, too distracted. And still, you stayed, hoping one day they'd see all you did, hoping that loyalty would be enough. But here's the truth. Loyalty without boundaries turns into emotional slavery. And they don't honor what they don't have to earn. They mistook your consistent love for background noise. Always there, always responding, always forgiving. You became familiar, and they confused that familiarity with permanence, like you'd never walk away, like you'd always be there, no matter how little they gave back. Until one day, you stopped. You stopped chasing. You stopped replying to texts that came 3 days late. You stopped explaining yourself in long paragraphs just to be misunderstood. You stopped reacting to the stories they posted to get a rise out of you. And that's when it hit them, not when you left, but when you went silent. Because silence isn't just an absence, it's a message. And it says, access to me is no longer free. You see, folks, attention is currency, but when you keep giving it to someone who hasn't earned it, its value drops to zero. It's like throwing gold into the ocean and wondering why no one dives in to pick it up. It's not that your love wasn't valuable. It's that you handed it to someone who never learned how to hold it. And now that you've taken it back, now that you're not available on command, now that you don't show up like clockwork every time they ghost and return with a half-baked excuse, now they start to feel it. They check your feed and you're not there. They throw bait and you don't bite. They post something vague and wait for your reaction, but it never comes. Because you've finally realized your energy isn't infinite, and you've stopped wasting it on people who only show up when it benefits them. They start to wonder, did I lose them? Are they seeing someone else? Why aren't they responding like before? Because in their mind, your attention was a given, a resource they could tap into whenever boredom, loneliness, or ego needed a boost. But now, that well has dried up, and all they're left with is the echo of what used to be, access they thought they'd always have. And maybe, just maybe, they start to realize it was never your attention they deserved. It was your absence they earned. This is what Stoicism teaches us: to protect our peace, to guard our energy, to stop handing out pieces of ourselves to people who don't value the whole. You're not heartless for stepping back. You're not cold for going silent. You're clear. You're intentional. You finally understand that being available to everyone leaves nothing for yourself. So let them feel it. Let them sit in the space you used to fill. Let them realize the seat they took for granted is now empty, and it's not coming back. Drop this in the comments right now. My access is earned. Say it. Own it. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world that you're no longer handing out emotional VIP passes to people who treat you like a backup plan. And stay with me, because next we're going deeper. We're talking about the ego hit they feel when they realize you were the throne and they were never the crown. Number 5. The ego can't handle the fall from your throne. They weren't in love with you. They were in love with being the center of your world. Here's the raw truth, my friends. They didn't admire your devotion. They fed off it. It made them feel wanted, important, in control. You were the sun, and they expected you to rise and set around their moods. And for a while, you did. You adjusted your tone when they were distant. You gave more when they gave less. You lowered your standards to keep the connection alive. Not because you were weak, but because you were trying to hold on to something that was already slipping through your fingers. And the whole time, they were sitting comfortably on the throne you built. You gave them a crown they didn't earn. You made them royalty in your world, while forgetting you were the one who constructed the entire kingdom. Every compliment, every text, every "Are you okay?" was a brick. Every time you ignored your gut just to keep the peace was a sacrifice. You gave them your time, your focus, your emotions. They didn't have to fight for a place in your life. You handed it over like it came without cost. But here's the twist. They got too comfortable. They confused your loyalty with neediness. They assumed your attention meant submission, that you'd never pull away, that you'd always stay waiting, orbiting, reaching out like you always had. Then the shift happened. You stopped giving. You stopped chasing. You stopped making them the center of your story and started writing a new one, without them on the cover. And just like that, the throne vanished beneath them. And their ego, it shattered on the way down. Because what they never saw coming was that your silence wasn't a game, it was a transition from being reactive to being sovereign, a transition from over-explaining to over-delivering in your own life, a transition from worshipping someone else's presence to honoring your own. And now, they're scrambling. Not because you attacked them, not because you lashed out, but because you stopped performing. You stopped dancing for their attention. You stopped proving your worth. You stopped bending to keep their fragile self-image intact. And now they don't know who they are without your praise, without your reassurance, without your emotional labor, because they were never really sitting on a throne. They were sitting on your attention. And when that attention disappeared, they fell. Hard. And let's be real, it hurts them in a way they'll never admit. You see, they don't miss the relationship. They miss the control, the certainty, the way you reacted when they went cold, the way you overanalyzed every text, the way you tried to fix what they broke. That's what they miss, the ego boost that came from being your priority. But now, you've become the version of yourself that no longer negotiates your peace, the version that doesn't explain absence to people who took presence for granted, the version that doesn't wait for an apology to move forward. You're not cold, you're clear. And that clarity is terrifying to someone who depended on your confusion to stay in control. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's what you've done. You've pulled your power back into your own hands. And once you do that, once you reclaim your throne, nobody gets to sit on it but you. So let them feel it. Let them sit in the silence they thought you'd never choose. Let them stare at the empty seat and realize it wasn't their throne. It was your attention dressed up like royalty. And now, that seat is reserved for peace, for purpose, for growth, for you. Drop this in the comments right now. I reclaimed my throne. Let them know, let you know. Show the world that your crown isn't given, it's earned. And don't go anywhere, my friends, because what's coming next? We go deeper into what happens when you stop playing therapist and start protecting your peace. Number 6, when you stop explaining, they start guessing. The more you explain, the more they think they've got you figured out. But when you go quiet, their imagination becomes your loudest voice. That's the power shift, my friends. That's when the game flips. Because when someone thinks they know your every move, they stop respecting your effort. They treat your honesty like weakness, your vulnerability like permission, and your explanations like background noise they've already tuned out. You kept thinking that if you just said it the right way, maybe they'd understand. You wrote paragraphs. You broke yourself down into pieces so they could get it. You poured your heart out, hoping the weight of your words would finally land. But the truth is, they weren't confused. They just weren't listening. And the more you explained, the more predictable you became. But then came the moment you stopped. No more long texts. No more "just wanted to check in." No more "I just need you to see how much I care." Silence, stillness. And suddenly, they're not so sure anymore, because here's the psychological truth nobody talks about. Certainty kills curiosity, but silence creates it. When they don't know what you're thinking, when they don't know how you feel, when they're not sure if you've moved on or leveled up, that's when the loop in their head starts spinning out of control. They're used to emotional access. You used to hand it out like candy. Every feeling, every insecurity, every doubt, they had a front row seat. But now, the curtains are closed, the show's over, and all they're left with is questions they can't answer. That's what they really hate, Not the silence, but the mirror it holds up. Because now they're forced to sit with what they didn't hear. They start filling in the blanks. Are they mad at me? Did they meet someone else? Why aren't they chasing me anymore? Their ego can't handle not knowing, because they were so sure you'd always be there, explaining, apologizing, bleeding for closure. But now, you've made peace your new language, and that silence? It's louder than every "I love you" they ignored. Think of it like this. You're a lighthouse, steady, shining, always there. But when you go dark, when that light vanishes into the fog, they don't just miss the glow, they start fearing the storm. Because now they don't know if they're safe anymore. Now they have to navigate without you. And that's the hardest part for them, because you were their emotional safety net. You were the predictable fallback. And now you've gone quiet. Not to manipulate, not to punish, but to protect your soul from people who couldn't hear you when you were shouting. And let me break this lie wide open for you. You don't need to explain yourself to someone who weaponized your feelings. You don't need to justify your absence to someone who mistook your presence for weakness. That chapter is over. You've turned the page. And they don't get a sneak peek at what comes next. Because what comes next is the version of you that isn't reactive. The version that's focused, grounded, untouchable. The version that's not seeking validation from people who only valued the pieces of you they could control. They say silence is golden. But in your case, silence is surgical. It cuts through the noise. It severs the old identity. It ends the pattern. And yeah, they might poke. They might test. A random, "How have you been?" A vague post meant for your eyes. A breadcrumb, hoping you'll bite. But you won't. Because once you've learned that peace feels better than attention, you never go back to explaining your worth again. So let them guess. Let their mind run wild. Let them wonder where you went, who you've become, and why they don't recognize your energy anymore. You've stopped being the open book and started being the author of a brand new chapter they don't get to read. Drop this in the comments right now. My silence speaks truth. Say it with your chest. Say it for your past self who over-explained everything. Say it for your future self who no longer needs to. And stay with me, folks, because next we're diving into what happens when your growth starts to look like betrayal to the very people who took you for granted. Number 7. Your evolution feels like rejection to them. When you grow in silence, it feels like betrayal to the ones who only loved your struggle. That hits deep, doesn't it? Because the moment you stop breaking yourself to keep others comfortable, the guilt kicks in. You start wondering, did I change too much? Am I being cold? Will they think I don't care? But listen closely, my friends. It's not your growth that's the problem. It's their ego reacting to the fact that they no longer have access to the old version of you. You see, they were never threatened by the broken version of you. They liked that you were stuck, confused, always needing clarity, always explaining yourself, always trying to fix what they kept breaking. You being emotionally available 24/7? That was their safety blanket. Not because they cared, but because they knew where to find you. They knew your patterns. They knew your emotional schedule, and they relied on your struggle to keep them in control. But then you shifted. You started going to the gym instead of texting them back. You stopped watching their stories and started writing your own. You pulled your energy out of their chaos and planted it in your purpose. And to them, that's not growth. That's rejection. Because the person they were used to controlling is no longer responding to the same emotional triggers. You're no longer seeking approval. You're building self-respect. And that messes with people, especially the ones who thrived on your pain, because your struggle was their power. Your insecurity was their leverage. As long as you needed them to feel okay, they felt superior. But once you stop needing them, once you start validating yourself, That's when they feel discarded, even if they were the ones who pushed you away. Let's be clear, you didn't reject them. You evolved past the dynamic that kept you both stuck, and they'll spin it however they need to. You switched up. You're acting different. You changed. Damn right you did. You had to, because staying the same was destroying you. You were shrinking yourself to fit into their world, and the moment you started expanding, you no longer fit. Think of it like this. You were both in a boat. You were bailing out water with your bare hands just to keep it afloat. They sat back, watched you struggle, maybe even poked a few extra holes. And then one day, you stopped. You swam to shore. You built a ship of your own. And now they're left wondering why you didn't sink with them. That's not betrayal. That's survival. But here's where the mind games begin. They'll try to guilt you. You used to care. You used to try. Yeah, you used to overextend yourself for people who wouldn't stretch a finger for you. You used to explain yourself to people who never listened. You used to beg for closure from the very ones who caused the confusion. That version of you doesn't exist anymore, and they hate that. Because now they have to meet a new standard if they want access to you. They can't manipulate you with silence. They can't bait you with breadcrumbs. They can't control you with emotional hot and cold games. You've rewritten the rules. And the price of entry? Respect, clarity, consistency. Most won't pay that price. And that's okay, because now you're not offering discounts. That's the cost of growth. It makes people uncomfortable. Not because you've wronged them, but because your evolution reminds them of their stagnation, and it forces them to ask questions they're not ready to face. Why am I not growing? Why didn't I treat them better? Why do I only miss them now that they're out of reach? And those questions echo, because you're no longer answering. So stop feeling guilty for becoming the version of you that finally protects your peace. Stop feeling bad for making decisions that support your future instead of healing people who didn't care about your present. Growth isn't betrayal, it's revelation. It reveals who was really there for you and who was just there for what they could get from you. Drop this in the comments. My growth is my power. Say it loud. Say it proud. Say it for every version of you that was made to feel bad for finally putting themselves first. And don't go anywhere, because what's coming next? We're going to break the biggest illusion of all, that you ever lost them. When the truth is, you just lost the lie. Number 8. You didn't lose them. You just lost the illusion. You didn't lose something real. You lost the lie you were trying to believe in. Let's rip the mask off, my friends, because this one's going to sting, but it's the truth that'll set you free. You didn't lose your soulmate. You didn't lose the one. You didn't lose something sacred. You lost the illusion you kept feeding, even when everything inside you was screaming for clarity. See, what really hurts after they're gone isn't their absence. It's the realization that you poured your heart into someone who was never really there. Someone who said the right things but never showed up with the right actions. Someone who gave you just enough to keep you holding on, but never enough to feel truly secure. You kept convincing yourself, maybe if I'm more patient, they'll open up. Maybe if I just love harder, they'll change. But deep down, you weren't in love with them. You were in love with the potential of who they could be. If only they tried, but they never did. And that's the hardest part to accept, that the connection you romanticized was one-sided, that the story you kept rewriting in your head, the one where they realize your worth and come back healed, was just fiction, that all the late-night texts, all the moments you excused their emotional distance, all the times you lowered your standards, wasn't loyalty. It was self-abandonment. And now the illusion is broken, and yeah, that hurts. Because illusions are seductive. They wrap around your soul and whisper, just one more try, just one more conversation. But the truth, it doesn't whisper. It slaps. It shows you that you were fighting for something that didn't exist, that you were holding on to a version of them that only lived in your hopes, not in reality. Let me give you a metaphor. You ever been in a fog so thick you can't see more than a few steps ahead? That was the relationship, and the moment you stepped back, went silent, detached. The fog started to clear. And what you saw wasn't love. It wasn't a deep soul bond. It was you, doing all the emotional heavy lifting while they sat back and called it complicated. But here's the freedom in this pain. You finally see things for what they are, not what you wanted them to be, not what they pretended to be, but the raw, clear truth. And when you see the truth, you stop chasing illusions. You stop waiting for apologies from people who never took responsibility. You stop explaining yourself to people who only listened to respond, not to understand. You didn't lose them. You outgrew the lie. You evolved beyond the version of you that needed their attention to feel complete. And maybe you're still grieving that version of yourself, and that's okay. Mourn it, bury it, but don't go back to it. Because the real you, the one rising right now, that version doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't cling to half-love and broken promises. That version builds. Stoicism isn't about pretending you don't feel the pain. It's about facing the pain with clarity, with discipline, with power. It's about realizing that losing someone who didn't value you isn't a loss, it's a release. You were never meant to carry that dead weight forever. You were meant to shed it, to create space for the people, the peace and the purpose that actually aligns with your evolution. And let me tell you something powerful. They're going to feel it. Not because you punished them, not because you tried to make them jealous, but because when you stop responding, stop explaining, stop feeding the illusion, you become the one thing they can't control anymore. And that's what truly shakes them. So stop asking, why did they let me go? And start realizing you let go of the illusion that they were ever truly with you in the first place. And that is growth. Drop this in the comments right now. I lost the lie, not myself. Say it like you mean it. Say it for every time you doubted your worth. Say it for the healing you're now protecting. And stay with me, because next we're stepping into the part where you rise so high they can't even recognize the version of you they used to take for granted. Number 9. The replacement was never a person, it was purpose. The most powerful comeback is becoming someone they no longer recognize because you replaced pain with purpose. Here's what they never saw coming. They thought you'd replace them with someone else. Another relationship, a rebound, a desperate attempt to fill the silence. That's how they operate. Plug the hole with a new distraction and pretend it doesn't hurt. But you did something different. You didn't replace them with another person. You replaced them with purpose. You turned your silence into strategy, your heartbreak into hunger. You took the energy you once wasted chasing texts, decoding mixed signals, overthinking every interaction, and you poured it into becoming unstoppable. You didn't run to someone new, you ran to yourself. And in doing so, you became the version of you they never imagined you'd reach without them. Because they thought they were the center of your story. They thought you'd stay orbiting them forever. But now, you've stepped into your own gravity, and it's heavy, it's grounded, it's powerful. You're in the gym at 6 a.m., you're building that business, you're locked in on your goals, you're focused, unavailable, mysterious. Not because you're hiding, but because you're evolving, and they feel it. They scroll through your feed, they hear about you through mutual friends, they check that old chat thread, but now it's quiet. And that silence, it's not passive, it's not bitter, it's not empty, it's full of motion they can't see, progress they can't track, power they no longer have access to. You see, they thought losing you meant nothing would change. They thought you'd always be around, stuck in the same cycle, waiting for closure that would never come. But the moment you chose purpose over pain, everything flipped. Because now you're not trying to win them back. You're becoming someone so elevated, they wouldn't even know how to approach you anymore. And that's what hurts the most. Not that you moved on with someone else, but that you moved up without them. That you stopped being the person they could guilt, manipulate, or breadcrumb. You stopped being emotionally available on demand. You stopped being predictable. You stopped showing up in places where you were ignored. And now you've become the question that haunts them. How did I lose them? And why are they thriving without me? Let me make one thing clear. You didn't do it for revenge. You did it because staying small was suffocating. You did it because waiting for their attention was draining the life out of you. You did it because you finally remembered who the hell you are. This is what Stoicism looks like in real life. It's not emotionless. It's emotionally disciplined. It's turning your silence into space. Space to rebuild, refocus, and reignite the fire they tried to dim. And now? You don't chase people, you chase legacy. You don't explain yourself, you execute. You don't hope for validation. You validate yourself through consistency, integrity, and results. So no, there's no replacement. There's only redirection, and it's taken you somewhere they'll never be invited to follow. Drop this in the comments right now. I replace them with purpose. Say it for the version of you that used to beg for bare minimum. Say it for the mission that now fuels your mornings. Say it for the peace you fought to reclaim. And if this hit home, do what strong minds do. Press the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because this isn't the end of your story, my friend. This is the beginning of the chapter where you stop being someone they used to know and become someone they could never touch again. Stay focused, stay rising, stay untouchable.